Hi everybody, it's great to see so many happy smiling faces. Learning is a passion of mine, a passion that started fairly early, so I think one thing about this country is that not enough people do what you're doing today, so congratulations for being here and hopefully I can help along the way. 33, maybe I look because my hairline a little older, but I actually am 33. I started fairly early. So what I propose to do today is this morning's session talk to you a little bit to start with just about myself, just about who I am and where I came from. And then after I'm finished with that, I'm then going to talk about, as Dipna said, specifically some of the property transactions that I've been involved in and some of the things I've done professionally and personally. As you can appreciate, those things cross over at some time, so sometimes I'll go down one track and then I'll retreat back and go along. So I hope that it will all make sense to you during the course of the day. I'm not a professional speaker. The extent of my public speaking ability is when I was school captain at school, so graduation speech was about it. So please bear with me if I get lost a little along the way. But I'm trying to be high on facts and content and maybe not so much on the polish. So, okay, let's get started. Retiring at 33. When I was preparing this presentation, I've never specifically gone and looked the definition up in the dictionary, but I did that the other day, and there it is. I like the first couple, the act of retiring or the state of being retired. That sounds all right, doesn't it? Removal or withdrawal from service, office or business. I really like that part. The portion of a person's life during which a person is retired. So I think that it all makes sense to us what that is. There's a couple of other parts down there that maybe don't sound so good. Number 4, a pension or other income on which a retired person lives. That doesn't sound too flash to me. And I think with the way that the economies of the Western country are developing, those of us that are relying on pensions to survive will be doing far less more than surviving. So, and there's a couple of other definitions. I won't run through them all, but my definition of retirement is working for fun because I want to, not because I have to. I came up with that fairly early. I don't really know where the inspiration came from, but maybe you might get some of that out of what I've got to tell you today. But the definition of my retirement, I guess, comes from on the 9th of November this year. I finished full-time employment. I ran a rather large development business on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland. At the time I finished, we had about $1.5 billion worth of development underway, and I started a development team that ultimately finished with about 15 odd people, but had an organisation around it of about 350 people. When I started there, I was the 8th employee into that business, so we had fairly significant growth over a period of time, and again I'll cover some of that in some more detail both this morning and this afternoon. So am I working for fun because I want to, not because I have to? I have a number of my own businesses. Again, I'll talk to you about those today, as well as a reasonably sizable property portfolio that, as a lot of you will appreciate, who have a number of properties, provides demands on a daily basis. And some of what I'll talk about also is the systems with how I cope with that. But generally speaking, for me, retirement is not having to go to an office every day, not necessarily having staff or businesses or properties that are demanding of me that I'm demanding of them, and I've got facilities in place to look after them. So that's where we are. The Wonder Years. Anyone seen the Wonder Years show? It's a great show. I love that. I think I grew up with Kev. So it was a bit of a tough battle for my parents when I was born. Mum was working at the Commonwealth Bank at that stage, and I think her weekly wage was probably about $150 or something like that. And Dad was an apprentice electrician. He probably earned less. So the early years were very difficult. I can recall us living in units and duplexes and those sorts of things, and perhaps in some ways that helped. Excuse me. That helped with some of the hunger that I had in the later years, wanting to be able to have that luxury of living how I wanted, not how you had to live according to your budget. They wanted to get ahead. They decided that to do that they needed to own their own property. So what they did is they went on the western fringes, like a lot of people do, I guess. You go and find the cheapest land that you can. Normally that's on the fringe of a metropolitan area, and I understand it's probably not much better now. It was a pretty tough place, but they bought a house and land package with very much the basics done. Dad, being an apprentice electrician, thought that he could do all of the rest of the work, so he did extensions. I think from memory he painted the house himself, he laid the carpet himself, he did lots of bits and pieces, and he was really value adding to that house. We stayed there for about 4 or 5 years and then moved back to the area that we came from. They bought an old house and undertook a renovation, and honestly, my father has to be the worst renovator in the world, or maybe other than me, actually. I spent a number of years in a house that was constantly being renovated. He'd finish one thing and almost compulsively would go and try and do something else. Generally, it was minor things, again, painting, carpeting, knocking walls out, bathrooms, laundries, kitchens, all reasonably non-structural type thing, until one day he decided to build a garage, and that was a disaster, but anyway. And then Mum and Dad decided that they wanted to get out of the rat race. Now, to put that in perspective, my father was the same age as I am now when he decided that it was time for a change. Funny that, really. So they decided Queensland was the place to be. The reasons I thought at the time were that Mum and Dad wanted to get out of the rat race for themselves. And it's funny, preparing this presentation today, I actually rang him yesterday and I said, why did you leave? And he said that it was really about me and my sister. I said, right. He said, well, we wanted a better lifestyle for you and better opportunities for you. So it was really a pretty amazing thing to do when you think about, well, when I think about my friends and the structures that I have in place on the Sunshine Coast, to walk away from all of that for the sake of your two children. At that stage I was 14 and my sister was 9. To do that for them was a pretty amazing thing. So Dad headed off early to make sure it was okay. He spent 6 months up there testing the job. He walked away from a very good job down here at the time. He'd graduated from his electrical apprenticeship and he was running a factory floor making switchboards with about 42 staff. And he went up to Queensland to essentially become a 2IC to somebody else. So it was a significant step back, but obviously something that he thought was the right thing to do. So he tested the water for 6 months. My mum and my sister and I stayed down here and until Dad said, yep, it's all good to go. Now, at that stage, when they first announced that we were going, I was 14 and of course I was the centre of the universe. So I didn't really want to go. And I said to Dad, well, I've got friends here. And I had a girlfriend. Well, I think we were pretty serious. It was 6 or 9 months or something. and I didn't really want to go. And Dad said, well, there's 3 things really. He said, first of all, you'll make new friends, no problems. He said, second of all, the school you're going to is co-ed. I was at a boys' school, so that was a tick. And then the last thing was there's a place called Bribie Island. So he's pulled this map out for me. And I was a bit of a keen surfer. I think I started surfing about 12 or 13. So he's pulled this map out and saw this coastline and he said, that's where we're going to live. It's 2 streets back. Now, to get to the beach from where we lived at Peakhurst was about half an hour walk to Mortdale train station and then about half an hour on the train station out to Cronulla Beach. So he said, well, you can ride your push bike to 2 streets or you can do the 1 hour thing. I said, yeah, okay, that sounds all right. Now, when we got to Bribie, I ran down the beach. Got there and the surf was that high. I thought, okay, well maybe it's a quiet day, that's not so bad. But I looked out and there's an island out there. And for those of you that know southeast Queensland, Moreton and Stradbroke Islands, well they were outside. What Dad failed to show me on the map was, yes we were on the coast, but there was an island outside and there was no surf at all. The third thing was he said, we're a family, we're sticking together and you're coming and that's it. So it was probably one of the best things that ever happened to me going there. I went from being probably a below average student in New South Wales to being an above average student in Queensland. Was a pretty good setup really. And you know, and at the time I thought that I improved, but I'm not sure that really that's the case. But it was a good change. Living in a coastal area, we had about 10,000 people on Bribie Island. We had a pretty close-knit community. It was a good place to live and a good place to grow up. I finished school there for the last couple of years and then decided, like most people finishing school, that I'd had enough of sitting up till 12 o'clock the night before an exam or the night before an assignment was due and getting that done. So university was the last place that I was ever going to get to. I was sitting on the couch, I think it was Boxing Day, watching the cricket. And Dad had just finished giving me a ribbing about how I was laying around the house and I should be out doing something. And an ad for the Queensland Police Service came on the TV. Now at that stage, Queensland had just been through the Fitzgerald inquiry. Now, I would assume most of you have heard about the Fitzgerald inquiry. It was a bit like the recent dealings down here with the ICAC. It was essentially about police and government corruption. So one of the recommendations of the Fitzgerald inquiry is that police should go through university training. Now, I didn't know any of this, but decided to apply to the police service. There was 10,000 of us, I think, that applied. They picked 400, and I think I scraped into about the last 3 spots. We turn up at the police academy. and the first thing they do is send us off to university for 6 months. Couldn't believe it. Here I was again. But the time I spent at uni